Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people seem to think the world revolves around them and nobody else matters. And in today's episode, it's all about horrible parents, guys. And Opie tells a story about her psycho mother-in-law who on purpose infects her daughter with an illness, and it gets wild. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories. Don't shake your heads too hard. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So when I was 18 years old, I was working full-time and living on my own. I had this one-bedroom apartment, so I asked my parents to store some of my childhood things that I couldn't fit in my home. These things were collectibles, rare video games and consoles, extremely rare Pokemon cards, discontinued toys, you get the idea. All in all, the stuff was worth around $12,000 to $15,000 if I sold it today. Fast forward a few years. My dad, in his infinite wisdom, decided that he was sick and tired of storing things we never used in the attic, so he purged a lot of stuff. Now, did he call me and ask me to pick them up? No, of course not. Did my dad sell them to make some money? Heck no. My dad did what he always did. He just went up to the attic and he threw out boxes that he deemed unnecessary into the garbage. He didn't tell me he had done it until more than a year later, when I went looking for my things. And I was furious. I told him, "Do you realize you just threw away thousands of dollars?" To which he responds, "Bull crap. I looked through those boxes and a lot of the stuff you had was all garbage. Nobody in their right mind would pay for those stupid things." But more than 10 years later, they still have hundreds of Beanie Babies in the attic, which according to them will be worth something soon. Oh boy, some parents don't understand, do they? Like $10,000 to $15,000 worth of stuff in the garbage. Like if I were in Opie's shoes, I would be livid. And the fact that dad didn't even mention it to Opie and Opie had to find out 1 year later when they went looking for their stuff, that is frickin' terrible. See, this is the kind of stuff that'll make kids go no contact with their parents. And a lot of people are saying that Opie should be going after dad's Beanie Babies for sure, to teach him a lesson. This person comments, "My mom was moving and she threw away my violin. She said I left it when I moved, so apparently I didn't want it. Well, I hid it up in the closet so it would be safe, and I forgot to grab it. Like, why wouldn't I want my 1911 violin that was my great-grandfather's that I carried with me since I was 10? She didn't even call to ask, she just dumped it, and I'm still salty." Oof. This person comments, "It could be worse. I came home from spring break my freshman year of college to find that my dad gave away our family dog. He didn't call me or give me a chance to say goodbye. When I asked where my dog was, he simply said he found a new home." Oh, that one just breaks my heart, guys. Like, it always sucks when someone doesn't see the point or value of something, so they automatically assume it's worthless. And if you think that was worth a head shake, we're just getting started. My dad died last winter. My oldest was 6 at the time, and my dad was her best friend. It hit us all very hard, and I was struggling to help my daughter through her first real loss, while mourning myself. My mom decided to self-medicate with crack and whiskey. She kept making promises to my daughter about spending more time together. As my daughter being 6, she was suddenly terrified that she would lose my mom too. My mom would always bail last minute. It was always to go to a party or hang out at the bar. She said this was her grieving. I said it was her spiraling, but she refused to seek help. Mental stability was not a priority in that household, ever. And here's where the entitlement comes into play. Less than 2 months after his death, my mom starts dating this new man. By February, she told my 6-year-old that grandma had a new man friend. She didn't tell me. I got to hear it through my 6-year-old's tears. She felt that grandma was replacing Pop Pop. Even if that's not the case, the relationship was new and the kid was still grieving. She didn't need to know about grandma's new relationship yet, but my mom disagreed. She said she has the right to tell her granddaughter whatever she wanted. So we got into a heated argument about boundaries and my daughter's right to mourn. That's when my mother yelled at me, "You need to support me on this." I informed her, like she did when I came out of the closet, that no, I don't have to support you, but I do have to accept you. She then accused me of demanding she break up with her boyfriend because, quote, a child threw a tantrum. I told her she was welcome to live her life, but she doesn't need to involve my daughter in every aspect of it. A few months went by of my mother constantly trying to force her new boyfriend into my daughter's life. She would ask to take my daughter somewhere to spend time together, and I would ask her if her boyfriend would be joining them. I had to turn her down several times after asking my daughter if she was comfortable enough to get to know him. She was not. Each time, my mother would scream at me about ruining her life. She would say that I'm impeding on her grief, that she was in mourning, and how could I treat her this way. So with all that said, my daughter's 7th birthday rolls around. We get ready for a family party held in our backyard. I specifically told my mom that she was invited, but her boyfriend was not. This was a 7-year-old's party. The birthday girl made the guest list, and there's no place for drama. Well, guess what my mother does? Not only does my mother bring her new boyfriend, oh no. It turns out the poor guy had just had a stroke or something, and he needs assistance walking. He temporarily needed a walker, and the party was through grass to the backyard. My mother left her date to fend for himself at the side of the road, and she strode into the party area with a look of absolute triumph that didn't make sense at first. And that's when I saw him coming around the corner, a man I didn't recognize and could only be one person. On either side of him were my in-laws, holding his arms, helping him along the grass. They didn't know him either, but they saw him struggling in the front yard, and they decide to help him make it to the backyard. And the moment my daughter saw him, she starts to sob. Seeing just my mom without my dad was hard enough on her at the moment, but seeing another man in the place where Pop is supposed to be just broke her. She ran inside to her room, and before I could get someone to cover the grill for me, my mom chased after her. I found them in her room, my daughter trying to pull away from my mom, and my mom hugging her tight and muttering something in her ear. Something inside me just snapped. I knew that position well. She was being told that she was a selfish child for having emotions. I just jerked my mom away from my child, and I pulled her into the other room, where the yelling began. My mom just yells at me and says, well, she needs to learn to get over this. She's being nothing but a brat. I tell my mom, she's 7, mother, this is hard for her. She then yells at me and says, you're being so mean to me, I just lost my husband. To which I say to her, and she just lost her grandfather, we're all hurting mom. I told you he wasn't welcome and she wasn't ready to see him. My mom says, well, he's already here, so there's nothing she can do but get over it. Tell her to stop crying. It's at this point I say to my mom, you need to leave. Mom says, you can't kick me out. I say to her, this is my house, now leave. Of course, she didn't go quietly. Everyone at the party knew that she was thrown out by my daughter. How she's just here to celebrate with her grandchild. When she was finally gone, I hugged my sobbing 7-year-old and I asked her what Grandma said exactly. My daughter said to me, Grandma said that I can't be sad anymore. I'm not allowed to be sad because he was just my grandpa, but he was her husband. So I'm not allowed to be sadder than Grandma. Hearing my daughter tell me that, my stomach churned, and I was suddenly very sorry that I didn't pop my mom across the face before she left. We did go no contact for nearly a year, and despite my mother throwing tantrums herself, we waited until my daughter was ready to let Grandma back in. She was able to mourn and heal in peace. You know, I'm glad OP's a parent with a good head on their shoulders, and they recognized that their daughter needed some time away from Grandma. Like, what a thing to say to a 7-year-old. You're not allowed to be more sad than I. You lost your grandpa. I lost my husband. Yeah, the stuff some people say to others never ceases to amaze me. Okay, so I can hardly type this out because even now, thinking about it makes me so angry. Here's the story. Earlier this year, my husband and I decided to spend Christmas with his family for the first time, since my daughter was born last September. Since they live 12 hours away, we decided to stay for a few weeks before Christmas, so they could spend loads of time with Annie, who's 13 months. So we arrived early like we planned, and everything was great. One thing to note is I've had a few disagreements with my mother-in-law Trish, who's 56 in the past, over my parenting style, but everything seemed great. After a day or two of settling in, my husband and I decided to pick up a few gifts from a mall around an hour away, before the last-minute rush kicked in. My father-in-law, 60, tagged along. Trish said that she was happy to take care of Annie. We got back a few hours later, and Annie was down for a nap on a blanket I didn't recognize. That's when Trish said that one of her friends dropped by and she gave it as an early Christmas gift. It looked pretty old and worn, but I figured one of her hippie friends was recycling it. The next 2 weeks were fine, aside from Trish making a point to prepare meals for Annie from scratch. I mentioned this to my husband, and he said to just let her be. Annie mostly mushed the food that Trish gave her with her hands and then threw it on the floor, as she's been doing at the moment. Trish just said that it would take her a while to get used to nutritious meals. Now, I was getting sick of her meddling, but it was only for a few weeks, so for the sake of the holidays, I just let it slide. Well, the day after Christmas, Annie was really unsettled and she wouldn't stop fidgeting and crying. I took her temperature and she had a fever, so I just kept an eye on her for the next few days, and thankfully it starts to go down. And that's when I noticed that she starts getting a rash and blisters on her arms and legs, and that's when I freaked out. I was packing a bag to drive to see a doctor when Trish asked where I was going. I told her Annie had a rash and I was taking her to see a doctor. She then gets a weird, smug smile on her face and she told me there was nothing to worry about. When I asked her what she was talking about, she said, without even looking at Annie, that what she had was just chickenpox. Now, I found this weird, so I asked her how could she possibly know that? And that's when she casually admits that one of her friend's grandkids had chickenpox a few weeks ago. So she asked them to wipe a blanket all over the child's arms, legs, and face, and to bring it to her house. At this point, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I asked if that blanket was the gift that Annie was sleeping on. She said, of course it was. And that's when I lost my lid. To be honest, I don't really remember what I said because I was up for 2 days checking on Annie. I just unleashed on Trish, asking what the F was wrong with her. That's when my husband and father-in-law came in to try to calm things down. And Trish dug in her heels and she said chickenpox was the best and most natural thing for Annie to get, to build up her immunity. And how dare I get upset at something that kids needed to get? I already have a vaccination schedule in place with my pediatrician, and she was booked in to get immunized for chickenpox at 18 months. So we drove to see the doctor, and he confirmed she had it. He said I'll have to cut Annie's nails short, and I might have to tape socks on her hands while she sleeps because kids so young can scratch until they bleed, and that will leave scars. On the drive back, my husband starts making excuses for Trish, saying that she was only doing what she thought best. I couldn't believe he was defending her, and we fought most of the way home, until I told him to stop talking to me. Annie's been scratching like crazy, and I had to tape socks over her hands. Trish tried to talk to me when we got back, and I told her to get out of my sight. We were meant to stay until the following Wednesday, but I just packed up our stuff so we could leave first thing in the morning. I was so angry that I couldn't even think. I just made the decision that I don't ever want to see her again or let my daughter see her again. I didn't think that was possible, but things did get worse. So I get up first thing the next morning and I start packing our stuff into the car. Once I opened it up, I kept the keys in my pocket since I was going in and out, and usually we would use Jack's set and leave mine in my bag. While I was packing, he just sat in the kitchen with Trish and my father-in-law, and they chatted and had coffee like nothing was wrong. Annie was still asleep, so I gently belted her in and closed the door. And that's when Jack comes out and he asked if I had everything. I said we were good to go as soon as he was. He then said, okay, and then he calmly took out his key set and he centrally locked the car, locking Annie inside. I asked him what the hell he was doing, and he said we wouldn't be leaving until I apologized to Trish. I, of course, asked what for, and he responded that everything I did was wrong. I think I was stunned into silence because he then took the chance to rehash what he said the previous day, that Trish thought she was doing what was best, and that chickenpox doesn't kill you, and that I was making a way bigger deal out of this than I needed to, and making Trish feel bad. And yes, he said making her feel bad, and I just lost it at that point. I told him he needs to stop being a son and start being a father. He then screwed up his face and he said he would always be Trish's son. And that was the point, that nobody should speak to his mom the way I had the day before, and that I need to apologize to clear the air. At that moment, I felt like I'd entered some kind of weird Twilight Zone, where I'd accidentally married a 9-year-old instead of an adult man. so I asked him to just open the car door so we could leave. He repeatedly refused and then walked back inside, and he said he would see me in there when I was acting more reasonable. And you can probably guess what happened next. I had left my bag on the passenger seat, so he probably assumed my keys were in there. But no, I waited 30 seconds and then just hopped in the car and drove away. My phone blew up with a million calls from him, Trish, and my father-in-law. Eventually, my mom, dad, and my sister Jess, who I'm super close with, called as well. I had briefly texted Jess about what's happening the day before, but she was stunned to get the blow-by-blow. By the time I was on the open road, I asked her to phone Jack and tell him he could walk home for all I care. Once she heard my side of the story and not Jack's, which apparently was I had gone crazy, frightened Trish, snatched Annie, and then sped away, she calmed all the way down. Mom, Dad, and Jess offered to start driving to meet me halfway so I could switch with one of them, so I wouldn't have to drive the full 12 hours home by myself in one day. I was so grateful to see them that I pretty much broke down at a truck stop parking lot while I blubbered I loved them. They all took turns driving while I had a rest. It was super reassuring to talk it over and hear that Trish and Jack are the unreasonable ones. Once we got back, I stayed at my parents' overnight, and they said I could stay as long as I needed. The next few days were fairly tense. I was up most of the night, making sure Annie didn't scratch herself, and it seemed like she just cried and cried and cried until she was exhausted. She has 5 scars on her face and a few others on her arms from scratching. And I know appearances shouldn't matter, but I'm so angry that her skin's marked for life now over some stupid BS. This whole thing is something I never expected to happen. I answered one of Jack's calls, only to have him start a rant saying he didn't recognize the person I had become. So I just hung up on him. He was due to come back for the start of the work year, which I wasn't looking forward to. But I figured that we could make it work as long as Trish was 12 hours away. And then at 11 p.m. one night, I get a very short and formal text from father-in-law via Jack's phone. He said that Trish had come down with shingles and she was in the emergency room, and that Jack was staying there to take care of her and he would work from their house remotely. Jack ended up staying there a few weeks after that, tending to Mama's every whim. I'm sure she put on an Oscar-worthy performance of having her one foot in the grave. The fact that he cares more about Trish than his own daughter speaks volumes. When he eventually comes back, I think we'll have a serious talk about our future together. Holy, what a wild story that was. And what mother-in-law did was so effing twisted, guys. Like, knowingly infecting an 11-month-old baby. I've read a lot of posts that leave me dumbfounded, but this one is way, way up there. Like, she got her friend to rub a blanket all over her son's sores, and then she had Annie sleep wrapped in it. Like, that is freaking messed up. And honestly, I'm so shocked that OP managed to keep her cool when she found out that Trish deliberately did that to her daughter. And the fact that her husband was all cool with it makes it even worse. This person comments, "He locked your daughter in the car, holy crap, and assumed you wouldn't be able to get her out. I mean, that's why he locked her in, to threaten you. Good on you for dipping out of there after that. What happens with your marriage moving forward? You seem to have your parenting priorities straight. Good luck, and I hope Annie feels better soon." And this person says, "Trish is old enough that chickenpox parties used to be a thing when she was young. My mom sent me to one because chickenpox had lesser effects than if you got them as an adult. It was a big risk for parents, but that was the lesser of all risks at the time because there was no vaccine available. Now there is, and Trish is an absolute freaking idiot who shouldn't be let anywhere near the grandkid. What an absolute moron to pull all this nonsense. And the reason she has shingles is she's reactivated her own exposure, which is a danger when you've had chickenpox. I'm absolutely flabbergasted that in this day and age, the risks of the past are being taken when they don't need to be. So stupid. I think Trish should be in jail for this, guys. Like, I swear, deliberately infecting somebody to make them sick has got to be a crime, right? Like, this lady is on another planet. Guys, let me know your thoughts and opinions on this. So this story happened a couple of summers ago. I've been babysitting a sweet disabled girl who we'll call Cindy, not her real name. Due to her condition, she's mentally and physically handicapped and she uses a wheelchair. She bites and hits herself when she's stressed or unhappy, which is very normal behavior since she can't express herself otherwise. She's happy and bubbly almost all the time, laughing a lot and playing with toys. One day, we went to a public pool since she loves water and watching other children play. We were at the pool, minding our own business, and Cindy was having fun with me, pouring water all over her legs. She laughed a lot, and she was chewing on one of her stuffed animals. A few of the other moms had made conversation, and they had asked questions about her, which I gladly answered, and they made silly faces at her, which she loves. Well, in comes Karen and her daughter. When they arrived, she glares at us for no reason. Probably because she spotted Cindy in her wheelchair. I just ignored them and continued playing with Cindy. After a while, Karen's daughter, who was about 5 or 6 years old, comes over and she asked me about Cindy. I tried to explain it as simple as I could to her. She then came close to Cindy and I warned her that sometimes Cindy likes to pull on hair. So if your head is very close to her, she does not know any better. She just thinks it's fun and she doesn't understand that it hurts people. And here's a note. You have to be very close to her though, in order for her to reach your hair. Closer than you would normally go up to someone you don't know. The daughter just ignores me and she moves closer with her head to look at the toy that Cindy was holding. Of course, Cindy stretches out her arm and pulls on her hair, happy to play with something else. The kid cried almost immediately. I tried to open Cindy's hand carefully so neither of the two gets hurt any further. The daughter was crying her eyes out and she was shouting for mom, who ran towards us with a fury in her eyes. Karen storms up to us and says, "What did your child do to my daughter? Can't you discipline your moronic child?" At that, I respond, "I'm very sorry. She does not know any better. I warned your daughter not to get close." Karen just keeps screaming and says, "You and your psycho child need to be kicked out. Why are you even at a swimming pool when she clearly can't be in the water swimming? I'm gonna call the police for assault. You are a terrible parent." I just say, again, I'm very sorry. She didn't mean to hurt your daughter, but... And that's when Karen did something I never expected. She slapped Cindy's arm really hard, and she said, "Don't you ever hurt my daughter again." Seeing that, I was shocked, and so were the other moms around me, who had witnessed everything. I tried to step in between Cindy and Karen and console Cindy, who didn't understand the situation and began biting her arm. I was at a loss for words, not thinking too clearly, and I was overwhelmed with the whole situation. I'm also not the confrontational type, and I've never been in a situation like this before. I just scream and say, "What are you doing? Are you crazy? Can't you see she doesn't understand? I said I was sorry." Karen says, "If you can't discipline your child, then someone has to do it for you. And look, she's clearly dangerous. She's biting herself. That's not normal. You need to put her in a home or an asylum or something like that." Hearing this woman say this, I was stunned. I said, "Listen, I'm just babysitting her and you never hit a child, neither your own nor someone else's. What kind of person does that?" Karen just says, "Well, your child hurt my daughter. I have every right to defend her and I will do it again." She then took Cindy's toy that she was holding and she kept going on and on about my bad parenting, clearly not listening to me. I then turned to Karen and say, "Please give her toy back, it's her favorite." The woman just scoffed at us and she told me that she would take it because Cindy hurt her daughter and therefore she has to learn a lesson and she had to have her toy taken as compensation. At that moment, a lifeguard came up to us because one of the moms had gone to look for someone. Before he could even ask, Karen starts to shout, "You have to kick them out. Her daughter attacked my child. She's clearly out of her mind. I want the police to be called and 2 of them need to be arrested. She clearly can't take care of the girl." That's when the mom who had found the lifeguard says, "She warned that girl not to get too close and she ignored the warning. That girl only pulled on her daughter's hair and did not assault your daughter. There's no reason to hit the girl." The other moms agreed and they were on my side. The lifeguard was very nice and told the Karen to leave us alone and that he wouldn't call the police to arrest a disabled girl. Karen of course did not like this and she starts shouting at him. He told her to either calm down or she would be asked to leave the premises. Of course, Karen, seeing that nobody was on her side, she just took her child. She went back to her things and packed. One of the moms beside me then went up to her and retrieved Cindy's toy. Karen and her daughter left soon after and the moms apologized for the whole ordeal, even though it wasn't their fault. I'm still in shock about the whole situation and it took some time to really console Cindy. Yeah, people like this Karen are horrible people. Like how she smacked a person in a wheelchair who's clearly disabled is beyond me. And it's also funny how Karens always cry for police about assault, but then they can go hit others as they please. And this person comments, I wish she would have called the police and then gotten arrested in front of her kid. She's the one that belongs in a mental asylum as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, that's entitled people for you guys. They never ever do any wrong. And that, my friends, brings us to another episode of r/entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/I don't work here lady, where psycho Karens are demanding everyone serve them. It's such a wild story. So go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.